everyone. Thank you all so much for coming out tonight on such a beautiful evening. Gold stars. You're in class for 1 minute, gold stars for everybody, because it's such a relevant topic. Now, not a lot of people want to ask about it, but you can't really go anywhere or do anything without running into people who are trying out some cannabis products, and you're kind of like, what is this all about? So I just wanted to show you that even my mom, who gets these, they look like magazines in the mail, but they're promoting CBD, a cannabis product, and they're like, ooh, this, and even in this Oprah magazine, my girlfriend saved this for me. It's called High Tea, and this wonderful entrepreneur in California is putting low-dose cannabis into tea bags so that the ladies can get together and have their own specific Sunday afternoon experience. We'll get to talking more about that. And you know, it is a little bit funny to get the word out because not a lot of people feel comfortable talking about cannabis. So this is my exercise at my cannabis classes. I say medical, you say cannabis. Are you guys ready? Medical? Cannabis. All right, fantastic. You guys are going to get better by the end of this presentation because I'm going to cover everything from the science to the application process. And I have 3 major goals with this presentation. Number 1 is to build up your confidence in the safety and benefits. Here, go on in. It's okay. I'm happy that you're here. Thanks for coming. And I'll give that to her. Okay, we got 3 major goals for the program. Number 1 is to build up your confidence in the safety and benefits of medical cannabis. Number 2 is to provide you with all the support you would need if you would want to access the program. And number 3 is to build up your courage, to literally encourage you to talk openly about medical cannabis. Because by the time somebody decides, oh, I think I'll try medical cannabis, imagine all the things they've already been through, and then they'll be intimidated or apprehensive about what their friends and family might think. So when everyone understands the safety and benefits of medical cannabis, then we remove all that apprehension and intimidation, and people can get relief sooner at the beginning of a disease instead of as a last resort. Now, I talk very, very fast. I'm going to cover everything as quickly as possible, so please silence your cell phones. And be sure to fill out that response card that you have with your name and email address. And even if you're like, oh, I'm not sure, blah, 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 you know what? By the time you're done with this presentation, you're going to know a dozen people who could benefit from this information. And I'll be able to follow up with application guidance and links to all the information that you'll need. So silence the cell phones and put your name and email address on those response cards so you'll get the information you need, and it'll be in your email inbox, and then that way you can forward it on to somebody as soon as it triggers your memory. You're like, oh, I know who this could help. I'm going to send on the information. Now, there are many ancient therapies that are slowly but surely making their way into the mainstream, like yoga, acupuncture, massage, and it's because they're generally considered to be safe and effective, and cannabis is one of these. It's been used since the beginning of civilization as a medicine, food, fuel, and textile. Even here in the United States, it was an ingredient in almost all the medicines used to treat everything from lice to menstrual cramps. Now, we have thousands of years of documented use, and there has never been a death from an overdose of cannabis. I felt like when I started studying this, I was like, wait a second, what? Never a death from an overdose. This is America. Give us something. We'll find a way to hurt ourselves with it. And even though the black market has controlled cannabis for 80 years, which they focused on maximizing the psychoactive effect, still never a death from an overdose. Now, many healthcare professionals will say, you know, we just don't have the research, we don't know what's going on. But what they really mean is we don't have a lot of those randomized clinical trials. Research has been going on since the 1960s, started in Israel. The United States funded that research, and now our government owns a patent called cannabinoids as antioxidants and neuroprotectants. That's very compelling. And now with all those decades of research, we know that there are over 100 different cannabinoids. I thought there was one, THC, the one that causes that psychoactive effect. So another wonderful discovery. Well, whoa, cannabis isn't just THC. Over 100 different cannabinoids, each with their own purposes. THC does have a lot of medical benefits. It can relieve pain, relieve muscle spasms, treat nausea, increase appetite. But there's another cannabinoid that's getting a lot of attention. People are more willing to accept it because it does not cause the psychoactive effect like THC. It's called CBD. Now, CBD, long list of medical benefits: strong anti-inflammatory, anti-seizure, anti-anxiety. Now here comes the most important information in the whole program. CBD inhibits the psychoactivity of THC. So when the patient gets a proper blend or balance of CBD and THC, they're going to get a blend of the medical benefits without the impairment. They get relief without impairment. So there's a whole other family of compounds in the plant called terpenes. They give the plant its unique and various smells. And while each terpene has its own medicinal qualities and each cannabinoid has its own specific qualities, we know that when they're blended together, it greatly expands their effects and benefits. And we call this the entourage effect. You know, multivitamin. You know, you want all those components there so you get a lot of wonderful synergistic effects. Now, there's the most important discovery from studying cannabis is the endocannabinoid system. So what we discovered from studying cannabis is that our bodies naturally create compounds that are almost identical to the ones that are inside the cannabis plant. So the compounds that our bodies are naturally creating are responsible for stabilizing pain signals, neutralizing the chemicals that cause inflammation, and preventing the plaque that causes Alzheimer's. Now we're just beginning to understand this complex intercellular communication system, but we know that its purpose is to provide balance and stability through all the systems of the body. So if a person's endocannabinoid system isn't functioning properly, it can be assisted with the cannabinoids from the plant. And what that assistance means: better sleep, better mood, and less pain. How's that sound? Right, and it's hard for anyone to get through life without running into those broad symptoms. So based on the safety, we should have a little cannabis first aid kit right next to all of our other first aid in the house. And cannabis isn't just making people feel better, it's saving lives. States that have a medical cannabis program have 25% fewer deaths from opioids. And that's getting to be a term that we all know, opioids, the opioid epidemic, where about 64,000 people have died in just 1 year from specifically opioids. So those are drug toxicity poison deaths in 1 year in the United States. So cannabis helps people reduce their dependence on those dangerous addictive narcotics, and it helps them sleep, it puts them in a better mood, and because it's so safe, they're able to make adjustments in their dosage on a daily or even hourly basis. And that's where cannabis really shows its difference from traditional medicine. The patient leads the dosage. That feels like a big responsibility, but I thought about this and I thought, oh, well, even when the doctor prescribes me something, take 2 of these, I'm like, I'll just take 1. So the thought of actually being responsible for the dosage doesn't feel that intimidating to me anymore. And about 23% of the people who are in our program in Illinois and have access to medical cannabis have no prior experience with cannabis. So no shenanigans in high school or college. And so when we have these new people start up the program, we go by the rule: start low and go slow. Journal each experience. The same exact dose can have a slight variance in its effect depending on the food the person's had that day, the mood they're in, or their environment. When we start off at the absolute lowest dose, it should be a combination of CBD and THC, with CBD concentrating on inflammation and anxiety, THC focusing on pain or depression. And that very first dose should be tiny, a 0.5 milligram, and the patient shouldn't really feel anything because it's actually stimulating cell receptors to prepare for that next dose of about 1 to 2 to 3 milligrams. And they should have at least 3 hours between each dose. As the patient experiences benefit and they say, oh, okay, that felt okay, I feel a little bit better, the patient can slowly increase the dose. If they feel better, they can go up a little bit more, and then they stop at the sweet spot. And what that means is they go one tiny dose higher, they don't feel any better, they might feel a little bit worse. So that's when they go back and hold at that maximum benefit dose, making adjustments in that CBD to THC ratio for maximum benefit, because there's a lot of people who can be diagnosed with the same exact thing, and they'll each have a completely different raft of symptoms. And then that way the patient can adjust their dose and their ratio to address their specific unique set of conditions and symptoms. The completion of customization comes by choosing a method of consumption. Smoking is definitely the most well-known method of consuming cannabis, but the intense heat can destroy the medicine and irritate the throat or lungs. So vaping or vaporization is taking its place. That's when those dried flowers from the cannabis plant are heated just to a certain temperature, and then they can also extract the oil from those cannabis flowers and heat that just to a specific temperature. It releases the medicine into a steam or a vapor to be inhaled. So either smoked or vaped, it's very important because it lets the medicine take effect in as little as 30 seconds. So when someone's in pain, every second counts. An alternative to inhalation is called sublingual or oral absorption. An oil or tincture is put in the mouth. The medicine gets into the bloodstream right through the mucous membrane and can take anywhere from 15 minutes to an hour for the patient to feel the effects. Now, another option is called edibles or ingesting. The oil extracted from those flowers is infused into a limitless array of foods or drinks, or even just a capsule, and swallowed like a vitamin. Now, here's the thing with edibles. It can take up to 2 hours for the patient to feel the effects, but the effects last for 4 to 8 hours. So now you can see when the patient gets to choose their own method of consumption, they can have an edible before they go to bed, get the best night of sleep they've ever had. And if that's wearing off in the morning and they're having a little bit of pain, then they can take a quick inhalation from a vape pen to get that pain back under control and managed. So a patient gets to do what they feel is best to keep management of their symptoms. Now, I just said vape pen, and I have to tell you that because we have a very creative industry here, wink, wink, we have a lot of new products all the time. Now, this is called a pen because of its shape. The bottom portion here is the battery. This cartridge up here, the red part, holds the cannabis oil. And typically a patient starts to inhale, they might press a button to activate the battery, but that battery heats up the oil and releases the medicine to a steam or a vapor. And here's the other thing about vaping, it has very little smell. So if you've gone down the street or been to a concert and you smelled that unique smell, you don't get that from vaporization. Much less smell, much more discreet. So I have our last method of consumption in this list. There are other types, but topicals. Imagine having localized, almost immediate relief from pain and inflammation. And it's such a perfect introduction to the most apprehensive patient because they think, wow, that was easy. I got rid of that pain in my arthritis and I was able to sleep through the night. Now let's find out what else this can do. You get a little bit more encouragement that way. Now we know that better sleep, better mood, and less pain are the top reasons for anyone to consume cannabis, whether legally or illegally. But I have a list here of specific conditions for what patients can hope to expect with medical cannabis. For people with Parkinson's, it will manage symptoms, reduce tremors, help them with their gait, and overall make them feel a lot better. We've seen wonderful results with this. Now with Crohn's, that's an inflammatory digestive condition. It gets that inflammation under control. It helps those people consume their nutrients. Everybody thinks, oh, I want to lose weight. Well, for these people who have these conditions, they really need to absorb their nutrients. Absolutely life-changing. For multiple sclerosis, this will reduce pain and relax muscle spasms. Post-traumatic stress disorder is closely associated to our military veterans, but anyone who's been through a traumatic event or lifelong chronic stress can have post-traumatic stress disorder, and cannabis helps them manage their stress, gets them their sleep, gets their anxiety under control, and then their family and friends, their spouse is like, oh, I see that person now who I remember from before that traumatic event. So that's wonderful. And a lot of people have known that cannabis was good for the pain and nausea from traditional cancer treatment, but cannabis has been seen to kill cancer cells and shrink tumors. This is my absolute favorite area of research. I just feel like if we have this, it can be a great complementary therapy to other options, and just overall just a safe, wonderful, non-toxic option. So look into that if you want to start Googling something fascinating. So you can see with just that short list of conditions why so many states have gone through the bureaucratic nightmare to create access to medical cannabis. And here in Illinois, our program has about 40 conditions where a patient, if they reside in Illinois and have a diagnosis of one of these, they can access our medical cannabis program. And what I like to point out is that we have rheumatoid arthritis, but not osteoarthritis. We have Crohn's, there you are, but not colitis or IBS, the other inflammatory digestive conditions. So while we have gone to the trouble to try to expand this program, the governor and his appointee haven't really complied with those provisions in the program. So with more people understanding how important this is and how safe it is, then we'll get rid of the blockade to that, make a much more compassionate program. And I'm going to try to make this application process for access sound as simple as possible, but it's not. And don't worry, there's plenty of people out there who want to give you assistance and try to make it as easy as possible and answer all your questions. So if someone has a condition on this list and wants to access medical cannabis in Illinois, the very first step is a physician's certification. Very simple form. I have them here with me. The doctor fills it out and says, this is my patient. They have this qualifying condition. And then the physician gives it back to the patient to add to the other application requirements. Now, there's a lot of physicians who simply aren't comfortable with cannabis, not a surprise there, or maybe they know about it but aren't real comfortable with the program or the knowledge of it. But fortunately, we're far enough into our program that there are supportive physicians in the area, and if you come up to me afterwards, I can give you some suggestions for people close by you, physicians who are willing to support patients who would like to access the program. Now, minors have to have 2 physicians verify their qualifying condition, and we have about 300 minors in the program, mostly for seizures, cancer, muscular dystrophy. Veterans might not need that physician certification. They might be able to download their medical records from a VA facility that shows that they're receiving treatment for a qualifying condition. So when that verification of that qualifying condition is out of the way, we get to move on to the actual patient application. Well, they will provide an ID like a driver's license or state ID, a proof of residency like a recent utility bill or bank statement, a 2x2 picture that appears on their card. Then they also have to do a digital fingerprint scan, costs between $50 and $75. The receipt and consent from that is added to the other document requirements and submitted to the state with a fee. The patient gets to choose a 1, 2, or 3-year card for $100, $200, or $250, a little break on that 3-year card. And then people who are on disability, supplemental security income, or veterans get a 50% discount on that fee. Now, there are people who would like to say, oh, you know what, it's so much, and maybe I'll just try it out for 1 year. Don't worry, you can do that, and then as you're card is close to expiration, you will be sent an option from the state to just pay to have it extended for 1 or 2 more years. So you don't have to feel committed to the 3-year card, but if you don't want to deal with any paperwork, just get the 3-year card and don't worry about it. Now, there are a lot of patients who would like to have a friend or family member be able to purchase the medicine on their behalf, and we call this a caregiver card. The caregiver should apply at the same time as the patient, provide pretty much the same documentation, and then they choose a 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2, or 3-year card for $25, $50, or $75. There's a very special application for anyone who has been diagnosed as having less than 6 months life expectancy. We call this a terminal application. It's free for both the patient and caregiver. No fingerprinting requirements, and it's expedited for the patient to receive their card in as little as 2 weeks. Now, this card expires in 6 months, but when patients get their medical cannabis, a lot of them outlive that 6 months, and the state will extend that for the patient for 6 more months for free. And then after that, they have to apply for a regular card, which actually does happen. Now, there are some exclusions. So it doesn't matter what the diagnosis is for these people. Right now, they're not allowed to access medical cannabis. Firemen, police, corrections officers, parole officers, people with a commercial driver's license, a permit to drive a school bus, or specifically a drug felony conviction. And I am in a huge rush and I don't want to take your time, but if we could eliminate those discriminatory exclusions, then those people wouldn't have to be relegated to the prescription opioids. So we'll get to blabbing about this as fast as we can so we can get those exclusions removed from the law. When that complete application is submitted to the state, it can take between 75 and 90 days for the patient to finally receive their card. It's designated to 1 dispensary because the state tracks the amount of medicine purchased, which is a standard limit of 2.5 ounces of dried flower or its equivalent every 14 days. Now, the dispensary designation can be changed. It's done through a contact with the state, so a person can purchase from a different dispensary. Now, I have this picture. This is a local dispensary here in Addison, Mindful. Absolutely beautiful. When you go in, you're like, what's this going to be like? You know, I thought maybe it'd be like an optometrist office, but they're beautiful. They've tried to really go above and beyond and exceed everyone's expectations. So when the patient finally gets to go in, they get to consult privately with a patient care specialist, and that time they can protect their privacy and just list the symptoms that they would like to treat. It's enough information to get a starting protocol going that the patient can adjust over time. And they absolutely love it when patients journal. If they keep track, whether it's on paper and pencil or it's an app on your phone, all that information about the results of the patient experience will let the patient care specialist know what inventory at the dispensary is best for that patient. So it makes a wonderful, wonderful relationship. There are about 39,000 patients. I forgot to check. We're going to get new numbers released probably today or tomorrow. About 39,000 people who have already gotten through the application process and been able to access medical cannabis, having phenomenal results. So I captured some of their quotes for you. I'm 27. I have chronic pain from surgeries, fibromyalgia, anxiety, depression, and insomnia. Thanks to medical cannabis, I've gotten off all pharmaceuticals. Cannabis has given me my life back. Hubby just completed the 60 grams of cannabis oil for terminal metastatic cancer. PET scan today, no evidence of live tumors. I replaced all my dangerous narcotics with cannabis oil. It treats my pain and got me through the withdrawals. It has changed my life. I went from being bedridden to living, gardening, walking, and losing weight. And you know what? I know the person who said and put this quote up. I don't know if she knows she's quoted in my presentation, but she is an absolute success story. She now works at a dispensary in Rockford, and it's just such a wonderful inspiration to see somebody who really is blossoming back into life. And it's always wonderful to get your curiosity out. Let's go ask some more questions, right? So if you have a Facebook account, go to Illinois Medical Cannabis Community. It's just such a wonderful, positive, and professional environment where the new patients ask their questions, the more experienced patients answer them and share their experiences. It's just a wonderful place where you can privately build up your confidence in the program. Now I'll do a quick review. I know I've inundated you with a lot of information. I've turned everything you knew about cannabis on its head. It's quite a shock, a lot to process. Cannabis is an anti-inflammatory. It treats chronic pain. It's a neuroprotectant, great for ALS, Parkinson's, multiple sclerosis. It's hundreds of medically beneficial components. It can be customized and has an unparalleled level of safety. Now that you've had your first medical cannabis class, how are you feeling? Feeling kind of a little bit overwhelmed, maybe a little bit curious. And I want to know, do you feel like, okay, you know what? Medical cannabis, I feel like I can get on board, but I'm not really sure about adult access. And again, we can start with the tip of the iceberg, knowing that if we created adult access, the people who really need it for medicine, who don't have the money to pay $250 for a state fee or $60 for fingerprinting or all the other requirements, or even did you go purchase the medicine, it would be nice as an adult to be able to go into a dispensary and say, I'd like some of that salve. And let me see if that works for my arthritis before you commit to all this bureaucracy. So just with knowing it will make a much more compassionate access here in Illinois, please get on board, talk as much as you can. It's a great conversation starter. A lot of summer parties you can go to and be like, you wouldn't believe what I learned at this cannabis class. Okay, so now I thank you so much for listening. It's absolutely important that you have your courage to talk about this. Please leave me with your name and email address so you'll be able to forward information to your friends in need. And if you have a group, a club, an organization, I'll do a presentation in a Walmart parking lot. It's worth it. I'll do it with one person. But I've done Rotary clubs and Kiwanis and garden clubs, and it's just so wonderful to get the word out there and make it easier for people to ask questions. And with that, I'll open it up for Q&A. And so I can hear some of your concerns, your comments, your questions. Is anybody ready to jump right into it? Ooh, good, excellent.
My concern would be, would the problem that I have allow me to use it? I have chronic pain, but is it the kind of chronic pain that comes under your list? I don't know.
Right, I don't know either, but we have a brochure that lists all the qualifying conditions. And what's nice is when you do consult with your physician, and you might be doing our pioneer work, because you might be the first person who's talked to your physician about it, but let that physician look over that list of qualifying conditions, because complex regional pain syndrome, I'm like, what is that? I don't know. Let me ask my doctor what that is. What is Myasthenia gravis? What's myoclonus? What's dystonia? These muscle spasm disorders might be part of a chronic pain syndrome, so it's up to the objectivity and subjectivity of the physician to know that your symptoms and diagnosis fall under one of those qualifying conditions.
So,
one more, and then I'll come over to you.
So what you're saying is see your own physician first, and if I'm not satisfied with her, I'll see one of yours.
Well, you have to have a qualifying condition. The physician has to see that on the
that's what
on the health records.
Is, would I have that type of thing?
Well, we know that spinal diseases and spinal cord injuries are many, and that's when if it is spinal cord injury, then the physician can look at your medical records and diagnosis and determine if it falls under that category. Thank you so much for your question. Do you still have yours?
Yes.
Okay, so let me do a quick repeat. I mentioned myasthenia gravis, very rare. I'm proud of you that you've heard of it. If the physician wants you to be able to try this complementary therapy, then the physician will sign the certification form. If you have that diagnosis and your physician won't sign it, then let me give you a supportive physician's name where you can bring your most recent medical records where they can see your treatment for that qualifying condition. And then we can be underway with getting that out of the way and on to the rest of the application requirements.
Okay, if you qualify, but That's great, but what about the cost? Because traditional medicines, you might have a copay where you only pay a small amount of the larger amount. I heard it could be kind of expensive.
It can be expensive to buy medical cannabis. So one of the most popular questions at my presentations. And how I describe this is that I'll go straight to the pricing. It's about 10 to 20 grams, $10 to $20 for 1 gram of dried flower. So it would that's quite a range. Okay, so $10 to $20 for 1 gram of medical cannabis dried flower, okay? But that dried flower has about 100 milligrams of medicine in it. Now, if a cultivator that grows this medicine then takes the dried flowers and processes it into the oils or the edibles or the topicals, it's more convenient to use. It can be a little bit more expensive. But what I like to let people know is that the amount of dosage needed can vary so widely. So way over here on the low end, we have people who microdose. And they're like, I do 3 inhalations throughout the day. It manages my pain. It's only about 2 milligrams per inhalation. So they get a full day relief with 6 milligrams of medicine. Then we have people who are doing therapeutic high doses of concentrated oil to treat cancer, HIV, hepatitis. They may hit the 750 milligrams per day of oil. So now you're talking a lot more expensive, okay?
A lot of people can't afford it. And do you think the cost could come down over time when insurance companies get it?
Absolutely. So those are the broad ranges, and then when you shake out all the oddities, people settle in about 40 to 50 milligrams a day. I'm looking at you, Ann. Do you feel like that's accurate, 40 to 50 milligrams a day? Ann is here. She works with PDI. She's a pharmacist. So she likes to come and help people with their questions, especially when people are concerned about being on a lot of pharmaceuticals and then adding this to the mix, which turns out to be very, very safe. So he's worried about people not being able to afford this medicine. That is absolutely a huge concern. So when we expand the program, it's going to lower the price. There's going to be more patients, there's going to be more supply, and it will bring the price down. And I did just hear, there's a lot of news, and they're like, oh, hey, a gram of dried flower that would be between $10 and $20 here is $5 in Oregon. So they're mass producing so much that it's driving the price down. So it's just a matter of time before we get there. But that matter of time can be a life-changing time for people. And I will tell you that my next door neighbor was diagnosed with Parkinson's. And this is this creeping erosion that slowly comes over and people don't notice, but I do her hair. So she comes over every 6 weeks. I see things eroding. And I'm like, come on, Lynn, get in the program. Oh, my doctor said no. So with the medicine, it was somewhat effective, but it doesn't work. It continues to erode. So I saw my neighbor not have the time. She's in hospice on Martha Street because she had a stroke. So I wasn't able to convince her to go around and bypass her physician and get a new supportive physician. So when I try not to talk about anything personal, but it really is a frustrating situation when you think, oh, if only they had known about this beforehand. So thank you so much for your questions. Before I go off on a tangent, anybody have any other quick questions? Good, wonderful.
I've got health insurance through my employer.
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering, would they cover anything?
There's no health insurance coverage in the United States right now. Canada has had one company expand insurance coverage in Canada, so we're on our way, but everything depends on that federal change of schedule. And every day we hear a little something in news where they're saying that it doesn't make any sense to keep it Schedule 1 and restrict access, research, as well as offering banking options for the people who are in the business. So no insurance coverage right now. And it's really a testament to how much people love the benefits of medical cannabis, because they say, oh, I could get all the opioids I want for a $20 copay. But I prefer medical cannabis because as I'm reducing all those medicines, I have much more positive side effects from medical cannabis with the better mood, better appetite, less pain. So yeah, it's really a wonderful testament to it. A lot of people like it. Yes?
I have talked to my doctor about getting medical cannabis. And I was told by the doctor that if they do any kind of a test, and if TCP or CBD, either one shows up in my urine, that they can lose their license to practice medicine. What do you do in that situation?
Well, I'm going to go ahead and tell you that there might be some internal office policy with that particular group or practice, but because there are 30 states at least that have provided access to medical cannabis, no physician has ever lost their license. No physician has ever been prosecuted for malpractice for recommending medical cannabis. And the first and foremost consideration of creating access to medical cannabis means that you have to protect the physicians and protect their prescribing license. So first and foremost, that was taken care of. So no one is going to lose their license. And I think that there might be a little bit of a concern because it sounds like your physician's practice is doing drug testing on their patients and then making decisions based on that. And we've heard a lot about this in these Facebook groups. People have said, if I test, they're like, I have to quit all my pharmaceuticals because if I test positive for THC, my physician is going to cut me off from all of my other prescriptions. Now, this is just, all this, we can sum all this up with just lack of knowledge.
It's legal.
Right, there's so many things about the federal classification of Schedule 1, the worries that physicians have, that when you shake out all of the facts, you say that this doesn't make any sense. Why would I have to be fingerprinted to choose a non-toxic therapy? I mean, there's just so many places to start. But because we have settled into prohibition for a really long time, it's really just a matter of making people understand that this always was a medicine. It was a medicine that your grandmother would have in her backyard. If someone had a stomachache or a headache, they would pull off a few leaves, brew it into a tea. Very, very low dose. And at that time, the cannabinoids were still balanced. It was still a predominant blend of CBD and THC with the other secondary and tertiary cannabinoids. And so it wasn't all about psychoactivity back then when it was a medicine. It was only prohibition that made the growth of it all about maximum psychoactivity, and it turned it into a psychoactive plant that still had medicinal qualities. So we have to know that we were dealing with a mutated plant for psychoactivity, and we have literally had to regrow different strains so that we would maximize the availability of those different medicinal qualities of the other cannabinoids. Thank you for waiting.
I've been told by 2 different doctors in 2 different states that, and they both of them do drug test their patients, that if THC showed up in their urine, that they had to automatically discharge that patient.
That's their policy, and it is a huge, huge mistake. And I don't think I need to have all of you throw gas on the fire because that's just not conscientious of what's best for the patient. And prescriptions are really the mainstay of a physician's responsibility. So when you fall outside of that, chiropractic, vitamins, herbal, massage, acupuncture, all of those things are entirely up to the patient. Physicians typically don't discharge a patient for trying other complementary therapies because that's the position of the patient. That's their complementary choices. So do you see how when someone like you has the courage, and you get to keep all your physicians, you don't have to drop your own physicians. You can simply take your records, show them to a new physician who's supportive, who does a traditional patient intake, and then when you start to feel better, go back to the other doctor and say, look, I've lost weight, I'm not using as many opioids, and it might be that one thing that cracks them and says, wow, I'm actually in more danger by prescribing more and more medicines. You guys have heard of that pharmaceutical cocktail Well, physicians start to get nervous. They're like, well, it's off label, but we've done it before and it might work out, you know. So if a physician could realize the benefit of their patient needing less pharmaceuticals, then they would realize that it's actually a provision of safety for the physician themselves. We'll get there. Just have to keep talking as fast as you can for me. Thank you so much.
But, oh, I noticed that you've got rheumatoid arthritis, but not osteoarthritis, and I was wondering why.
Well, it's because it happened. The question was, why is osteoarthritis not on the list, but rheumatoid arthritis is on the list? When they were making the list for Illinois for this program, they looked at other states and they collected together what information they felt they had and said, this is our starting list and we're going to expand it, but then they really never did. So that's why you wouldn't see osteoarthritis on there. Okay, now I need to touch on CBD only, because you guys see that in our Illinois program, it's called a whole plant cannabis program, where you have access to medicine that has all of the cannabinoids present. But there's a lot of people who don't qualify for this program and they ask about CBD only. Because that CBD being a strong anti-inflammatory, anti-seizure, anti-anxiety, and non-psychoactive, not like the THC, it falls into what we call the legal gray area. So these CBD oils are available. Sometimes they're like, hey, you can get them at Walgreens now. Oh my goodness, you can get them at these little places, health stores, CBD oils. And every day there's another brand out there like, this is our famous brand and it has these wonderful qualities. But because CBD only products, while falling into the legal gray area where people can buy them online, they don't have federal regulations. So if for people who are looking into doing CBD only, and I highly recommend it because at least you can get maybe some of that relief while you're waiting for your card to arrive for your whole plant cannabis access. So we ask that you use a brand that has a good reputation, that does independent lab testing. Now there's two, are you guys ready with your notes? There's two brands that I recommend. Alternative Vibes. Oh, good. Alternative Vibes with a V, Vibes. And Mary's Nutritionals. Mary owns it, so it's apostrophe S, Mary's Nutritionals. And they have they have it in patches and oils and salves, and you can give it to pets. It's wonderful. So that gives people a way to access some cannabinoid medicine, but it doesn't quite have the pain relieving qualities that THC does. But if someone's illness is inflammation related and that's causing their pain, they might get a lot of pain relief from CBD only. The difference between what's legal and available online, that has CBD only. It's only CBD. It only has the cannabinoid that's famous for inflammation and seizures and anxiety. When you get your card and you get into the medical cannabis program in Illinois, you get to have access to all of the cannabinoids, primarily THC and CBD. So you can get that blend of relief and that relief from pain, nausea, other symptoms. And here's the thing, like I'm giving you these broad ideas, CBD, anti-seizure and anti-anxiety, THC, anti-pain and anti-nausea. Each person's endocannabinoid system is unique. So those cell receptors and the compounds that our bodies naturally create is unique like a fingerprint. So even though people will come into the dispensary and say, here's my symptoms, the same product will have a completely different effect on two different people. But that's just wonderful about this product, is because you get to customize it to address your body's specific needs. And that's a kind of liberation that's responsibility, but also makes you feel like, oh wow, I'm in the driver's seat. I can make this accommodate to what my needs are. And it's very liberating.
Is there a difference between what you get in recreational marijuana dispensaries and what you might get here? Because I think, I could be wrong, but the recreational might have more of the THC
psychoactive effect. Okay, so your question was, what's the difference between buying medical cannabis in a legal program And buying recreational cannabis, are you talking about the black market or in legal states?
The legal states.
Okay. The thing about buying legal cannabis is even if you're buying medicine, you can choose the maximum THC because that might be what gets your pain under control. So even though high THC cannabis is considered to be what was on the black market, now you're getting it legally grown by a cultivator with high security. They test absolutely everything. They're not allowed to use any chemicals or things non-organic, especially after the flowering stage. So although you can go into a medical cannabis store or a legal recreational purchase, you'll still have all of those choices of full THC to any blend of all up to all CBD and other variants in the other cannabinoids. But what you get that's different from the black market is consistent quality testing, no fungus, no toxins, no bacteria.
Now, once you're approved, excuse my voice, once you're approved for it, then you just go and they will help you at this clinic to kind of help you decide what you should try first.
Yes.
What, yeah.
Yes, it does feel, I describe this, you know how like you think you're on the ground, but you actually have one more step and you're like, whoa, that's that kind of apprehension that you will feel thinking, oh, well, I'm gonna go in there and I'm gonna decide what I get. You will have guidance from the patient care specialists. They'll listen to the focus of what your concerns are and say, okay, let's get you started off with something that's more directed toward your specific symptoms. So you get that guidance, but you also get to further customize specifically for your needs as time goes by.
I had ordered some samples of CBD oil online, and one turned out to be CBD 100 milligrams. The other one came and it was, the label on it said hemp oil. Is there a difference between the two?
Well, I don't know what you got, but I can explain why one says CBD milligrams and one says hemp. I'm from the country, you guys. There's still hemp, textile hemp grown in the ditches of Illinois because it's such a hardy plant. But hemp is the same plant as cannabis, the same way that a Dalmatian and a Dachshund are both dogs. And the reason why your container says hemp is because it provides a legal barrier for the person producing it so that it falls under the textile type hemp oil as opposed to medicinal CBD. So do you see how it's a labeling name? And you said that your bottle said 100 milligrams.
Yes.
Well, the Alternative Vibes, when I buy my CBD oil from Alternative Vibes, it's this big of a bottle with a little eyedropper cap, 3,000 milligrams in this bottle. So you have to use much less. So for someone who can get their symptoms under control for 50 milligrams a day, you're going to plow through a 100 milligram bottle of CBD oil really fast. So that's what you really need to look for is the CBD milligrams. It's super important to follow, even if you're using just CBD, journal it and follow the start low, go slow process. So if you don't know what the milligrams are in each drop that you get, how do you know if you've had a half a milligram or 50 milligrams? Okay, so we want you to know what your exact dosage is, and as much as I want to build up your confidence in the safety, it's a wonderful, powerful medicine. I call it the WD-40. Or you get another like country reference, you guys. Okay, where you just get, it gets everything loosened up. You're giving yourself a lot of those cannabinoids that your body might be craving or needing. You got a shortage of them maybe as time goes by. So let's get that CBD in there, but even though I've said it's safe, follow that dosing protocols because then you find out your absolute minimum dosage where you get maximum benefit. So you aren't taking 100 milligrams when you only need 20. Think about how much longer your medicine will last. Excellent question. Thank you so much. We'll take one more and we'll start to wrap it up.
Okay, real quick, now this is for my sister who's very badly disabled from all sorts of spinal surgeries and knee surgeries and tons of stuff, rods in her back. Now her doctor, I mean, is any of this going to make her, less stable or, because I know she's on hardcore drugs for the pain.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know, does she have to worry about with this stuff of it affecting her balance more, or her this more, or stuff like that?
Right. I think what you're asking is, again, a really common question. You're worried about impairment.
Yeah.
You're worried about, oh, is she going to have this dose and this is going to make her more messed up? You're absolutely right. There's a lot of impairment involved with the other pharmaceuticals.
Yeah.
And when we start patients off, so this is everybody says, please, I just don't want to be messed up. I don't want to be stuck on the couch all day. I don't want to be zoned out. And that's why we always start off with that balance of CBD and THC. And some people can feel a little bit of a psychoactive effect with that 1-to-1 ratio, but if they don't like it, then they can go to a 4-to-1 ratio where it's 4. Yeah, it's no worse than what she's on. And maybe if she were able to reduce her dosage of those really impairing drugs, she would feel have a little bit more clarity. Okay, excellent. How are you guys feeling? Do you guys want to wrap it up? You can come up to talk to me. Make sure that you give me your email address and name so that I can follow up with you with application guidance. And I can also follow up with recommendations for supportive physicians if you need one of those, okay? You guys are absolutely wonderful. Please ask me to do a presentation for you sometime again soon. Thank you. Thank you.